podcast is powered by PKF. PKF, your trusted advisor in the Hunter for over 45 years. Down to Business acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters this podcast is recorded on.
Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Down to Business. I'm your host, Andrew Beattie, and today I've got joining me Trent Watson from Ethos Health. Trent's the founder of Ethos Health, or one of them. It's a health and safety business is the best way I'm going to describe it. He'll do a much better job than me, but we'll get into that. A former Knights halfback, a country boy that now calls Newcastle home. Husband of Jane and father of three busy teenagers. So welcome, Trent.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew. Yeah.
Mate, as I said, we explain a hell of a lot more than just a health and safety business. Someone that's used Ethos, I know it really gets in that allied space, but there's so much more. Before we get to Ethos so much, but tell me a bit about the background. I mean, I know you've lived in Newcastle for a long time, but not here, not from here originally. Tell me where it all started and the sporting, background and.
They grew up in the Mallee, Victoria, in a place called Nullawal, so I was born in Witchyproof, which everyone laughs at.
Witchyproof.
Witchyproof. Does that exist? So in Victoria. So grew up with AFL pedigree, moved into Grafton, so they got out of sheep park up in Grafton to get away. And so then, we're in the heart of New South Wales and rugby league country, and I think my eldest brother decided one day he was going to play for the school in rugby league, which my parents were horrified about. And then his twin brother moves up, they get into business, and then they decided that they can't support two families on it, so my father starts a caravan business in Coffs Harbour, so we moved to Coffs.
Yeah, right.
And lived in Sawtell for a decade of my life, so Grafton for a decade, Coffs Harbour for a decade. And, following in the footsteps of your older brother, you just want to do what they're doing. So I played league and, loved it. And, went through the schoolboy system, got a scholarship here at the Knights started in 95. I enjoyed school and did well academically and always had this vision to do and go to university as well. So came down here. I actually wanted to do occupational therapy and I didn't get the marks for that. And dietetics was my second selection. So, and the rest is history. I actually then did nutrition dietetics, studied that whilst I was playing at the Knights from 95 through to 2000, finished at the Knights. I think I was... family actually go to university and the only one in amongst I got three brothers as well. They all still work in the family business. So, so I didn't know what a bachelor was at that stage, let alone a PhD. But, I went through university, did my undergraduate, and then I got offered to a scholarship to do a PhD. So then I subsequently did that, and that was in human performance in a sporting nutrition side of things.
So it probably introduced you the wrong way, mate. We got the doctor.
That was an interesting experience that, in retrospect, there's a lot of hard work and people go, oh, you must be clever. And I go, no, that's just hard. A PhD is just hard work. You just got to apply yourself and I think be passionate about it. A bit like business, I suppose. Like, it's hard work. And,
absolutely.
And you've just got to apply yourself and hope for the best.
And like you say, we'll come back to, I guess, how the business started again, but dietetics, 95, for some of us probably doesn't seem that long ago, but what are we talking, 30 years nearly?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm in the same boat. But when we start to look at that, you say, well, it's interesting how at that stage, probably most dietetics would be either involved with a hospital or something like that. Did you go straight into business or was that,
Well, it's funny, I came through rugby league in that Super League time when, you came out as a schoolboy and you got paid reasonable money, which was never a thing in the past. So, and because I was still playing league, I couldn't sort of fit in the hospital system or community nutrition. And, there was a few favours being had with providing sports nutrition advice amongst the Knights. And naturally, I started doing that. at that particular point in time, my parents then being in business, how do I do this? Well, you've got to register a business name for GST.
Yeah, sure.
And that sort of flowed on from then. And, when you're a male dietitian also, you then, all of a sudden, it started happening that, these blue-collar workforces were saying, oh, we're doing some health and wellness. You'll relate to our middle-aged men, of which I am now, but I wasn't then. And then naturally I started getting into, the workplace, health and wellbeing area. And, and I suppose subsequent to my PhD, because I was naturally in that environment, that was when we were a dietetic business alone, included on food. And then because we were working in the workplace, we were meeting up. I was bumping into these guys from this business called Physio at Work. And then I think naturally, what happened then is that one of our key clients said, we want to run this wellbeing program, but we want to be seen as one thing.
Yeah, sure.
And then they said, can you guys get together and,
But what I like about that is, whether it was your idea or whether it was, put upon you, your market's the one you're selling to and you've met a market demand.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And I think too many business owners get trapped in their dream, and what they want to do, and it's really not listening to the customer.
Yeah. And it is interesting, you can set out on a career and think it's what I've learned over time, it's never linear. I do very little dietetics now, obviously running a business, but and that's with 26 people in it now, and we've grown and shrunk over time, 65 to 17 to 26 currently. So I think that's, this linear course that you may think it is, you never want to be under that perception going into business. And that's probably something I've learned over time as well, that you got to roll with the punches sometimes. And sometimes when it's not all going your way, you're learning a lot. As well as the successes, you learn a lot from those failures as well. So, yeah. Yeah,
no, it's a good point. I think, a big part, we might touch on that point now is, what is your methodology or what sort of support do you get in learning from those, things that may have not gone to plan or even things that have gone to plan, like do you have that, or is it just sitting down by yourself? Or?
No, and it's funny, as a dietetic business, it was me and my wife. Then we formed that alliance for Physio at Work and formed Ethos Health in 2011. So we were from 98 to that point. And then we formed Ethos Health, and that's been now trading for 12 years. I've always had business partners in that, so you're leaning on those. We've had and engaged in various forms of leadership training. I've been if I pick up a book, it was generally in business and trying to learn. I just, was a bit of a sponge throughout those years and still am. I didn't believe in reading fiction because, what's that going to teach me? I've sort of changed that over time though. It always had to be practical and learning
I know what you mean.
And evolving. And then I've had some tremendous, been to a lot of leadership, and I would identify probably one particular leadership course that went, I still use that stuff every day. And I know the people that went through that with me use it every day.
What's that one?
With a guy, he's a local fellow, and he got highly recommended, and we got told this is going to be extraordinarily challenging for you. And when we engaged him, he said, you've just got to be ready to be the most vulnerable person in the room. And I went, all right. So a guy called Richard Ford.
Oh, Richard well.
Yeah. And anyway, from that, I think, a lot of those learnings I apply to this day. I've had some other tremendous mentors as well. Some local people that are well known, say Jeff Ether, who, has been a very good businessman, and he's supported us through some times as well. Which
I think there's some great common things that come up in all these talks we do, and and one of the key ones is mentors, mentors, coaches, sounding boards, that sort of thing. But what I often find, I'm sure you'll share this, is half the time you ask someone to help, subject to availability and that sort of stuff, not too many people that say no.
Yeah. I should throw, whilst I'm throwing a few of these, there's another, Lee Baines is another person who, has done a tremendous amount for our business and also, and me personally as well. And there's others I could name actually, even to most recently, Chris Kelleher, I know is familiar with PKF. Yeah.
Ah, very good. So I mean, it's an interesting story in how you got to where you are, and again, I like the way it's come together. Ethos. So let's talk Ethos. So Ethos Health. My experience with Ethos Health is mainly allied services, but it's so much more. Tell me about that.
So we've got the allied health services, and principally, I suppose what leads that is our physio and injury prevention management. We've got our dietetic services as well, and so obviously so Itch's services our local community largely. We've got a clinic here at Wickham in our new premises, which we're really really happy with after being in Denison Street for 20 odd years. It's nice to have a refresh. So that business services our community, so sporting clubs, GP referrals, walk off the street community people, so physio, dietetics, and also our ex-phys. So they're largely GP and specialist referrals dietetically, and we're specialising, and it's principally around the health professionals. So if they're specialising in childhood nutrition like my wife does, you're often specialising in that area, but it's weight loss and diabetes and cardiovascular disease and all those referrals from GPs, similar to exercise phys. But here we also do pre-employment medical. So more recently we've added or have an occupational physician working out of our rooms. So we're delivering a lot of pre-employment medicals and health screening for organisations as they're employing people into their business. So that's the clinical service. The second part is industry. So we have probably 4 key aspects, or 5. One is our health and wellbeing programs. So I'll give you a taste of that. I chaired the obesity subcommittee for the New South Wales Minerals Council because they identified that their obesity rates in mining are at 85% compared to a population 67. So we did a literature review, identifying what are the things that predispose that group of people to obesity. We developed a framework in consultation with the industry and the stakeholders, and then we develop an implementation guide for them to manage it as an industry. So that's the health and wellbeing, and we deliver a whole range of other health and wellbeing services, talks and fatigue risk management, which is a big issue in 24/7 operations. So risk assessing, writing policy for organisations at the high level, and then helping implement, and then I'll talk about technology to automate the implementation of their risk management system. Then we've got musculoskeletal. So you've got a lot of organisations, particularly in blue collar, that can be, that have high workers' comp injury premiums because there's people getting injured. So we're again providing risk assessment, providing early intervention and treatment strategies to them for them to minimise that workers' comp premium. I suppose the third element, and I'm going to put this in there, it's mental health. We don't do mental health. We work with a lot of other, so we stay in our lanes with those other 3. So you said a health and safety business. So where we deal with health human factors that have a safety implication in business, we work in that space.
That's really interesting. I think from a business owner's point of view, there's something to take out there around, I'm assuming this is not where it all started, as we said before, but evolved, learning more about other industries, what's around you, what their, I'm going to say mandatory or best practice needs are, and how you can fill a space. I guess that's the base of selling, isn't it? Again, you get too many businesses that go, now this is what I want to do. Yeah. But you found a real area there where, it's still stuff we want to do, but it's stuff that others have to do, and we've got consistency, I guess, of patience and income for that matter. I imagine there's a fair bit of recurrence in what you do. So, you can still be innovative, but it's probably much easier from a delivery model point of view. So it's quite a little niche you found there.
Yeah, and it's interesting the journey in which you take to find that. So I'm the principal fatigue subject matter expert, and you go, aren't you a dietitian? And so how did that come about? That's an interesting story in itself. You go, right, a dietitian working in mining. Someone hears about that, and there's a tender in the West, in WA, and I spent 2 years fly out of there after my PhD to do research around human factors in fatigue. So the principal question is, why can some people handle these high-intensity work rosters where others can't? What are the human factors? So I was asked to join a research group to provide dietetic input. There was a psychologist, there was an ex-phys, and there was a physician. And so ever since that date in 2003, 2004, I've worked in fatigue risk management ever since. So that would consume probably 80% of my time as a consultant outside of running the business.
Running the business, yeah. No, I think it's very interesting. And again, I bring it back to, you can have the greatest ideas, you'll be the most qualified, but if you can't monetize it, it's probably a short-lived exercise. So it's quite well we've done it.
And the point you make in monetise part of our business, and that's technology. So everywhere we've gone, and we've engaged in this, and they say in academia, publish or perish. But sitting on boards, reading the Australian Institute of Company Director magazines, there's a lot of stuff coming out. If you're not indulging, you're not engaging with technology, you'll perish. Yeah, so I think we took a bit of a leap 10 years ago to then, because the question always came when we were working in workplace particularly, surely there's an app that does this, that helps us with fatigue management or injury management. So we started, dabbling in that area to try and automate the implementation of a lot of compliance elements associated with these work health safety. So I think whilst the core of our business is our foundational stuff is our face-to-face community-based stuff. It's our face-to-face stuff in the workplace. That's the core. The stuff that we're now growing as a business is our technologies. And I think that's, and I think back, and because I think in allied health services, it's a bit of a struggle. The margins are very skinny, and it's something that you can't scale very easily. You've got to provide highly capable people, find highly capable people and to deliver these services to maintain your reputation. But that's hard to scale, and it's a really big obligation to train people to. And sometimes you feel like as a small enterprise, sometimes you train them and you lose them, and you'll get a bit jaded. Well, I have done in history, but now, I take a bit of pride in when someone comes through our system, they train up and then they find a new opportunity. Yeah. So, but I think that's a bit of business.
Well, yeah, I think, it is mature, but it's also not only the fact that it can be expensive and it's hard to train them, it's hard to get people. That's been an ongoing thing for, at least 3 years now. It's got no sort of sign of slowing down. So I'd agree with you. I think technology, a lot of businesses now are being forced to use it anyway, but you'd rather be a proactive player rather than a reactive. It's a cool one. We're only having this chat with a business owner yesterday, and you're looking at when we say, we need more resources. And straight away the mind goes labour. But first thing I think you need to look at is, it's probably a dual approach. Where can you get more automated? Where can you leverage processes and systems? Where can you use resources to get more leverage, to get more scale, etc., and really build your business before you need to bring in other people.
Yeah.
Or if you do bring in other people, it's really cramming capacity sense. So
yeah.
That's good. I think the other thing to point out too, from a business owner's point of view, some of the stats Trent just said around, fatigue and obesity and what that does to sick days and productivity, all that sort of stuff. From a business owner's point of view, if you haven't got part of that in your well-being, that's something that needs to be looked at, because it does have real effect on bottom line.
I think the recent legislation, managing those as a business owner, that's what we've seen that needle shift already in demand for services. It has had a real impact, I think.
I think, a good thing is that, mental health has received so much focus, I guess, in recent years, and that stigma that's probably associated with it is reducing. But I've heard it said very well. It said, that's the problem, but it's only awareness. We need mental health action. And I suppose not to focus on mental health, but it's the same as whether we're in general wellbeing and that. It's about getting people in a better state that can be more productive.
Yeah, and that's it. And it's providing that that culture. Your systems and policies, your partnerships that you have, that connectivity, in a mental health space. All of that matters with all your other elements as well. If you got to have a balanced portfolio to actually deliver real outcomes to workplaces, and you see some workplaces performing, high maturity in that area and doing lots of good stuff in that space where their workforce, and you can see the results as a consequence. They have lower turnover, lower incidents and events. We've just done a major project for a utility on musculoskeletal, and we're asked to, don't worry about the systems and processes. We think we've got those pretty covered, and our response to injuries, we've got that covered. Can we look at the other stuff? And, what are the tasks that are putting us at high risk, and is there any way we can mechanise this to make it easier? But what we've actually found, this has been 12 months and a very large project with, an employer of 5,000 people, is that we're toying with, we're going to call the report, it's not about the trolley, because the things that actually statistically correlated with injury outcomes, almost in a linear fashion with the psychosocial elements, were frontline leadership. Really interesting, a big enough organisation where you could see within that organisation those divisions that are doing that well, far less injuries. So it was looking at it a bit more holistically and trying to get some of those outcomes as the stuff that we're really interested in and is really interesting for us to, because what drives us, I suppose, is principally is better health outcomes. Our purpose is to keep people healthy, happy and safe. And we know the businesses also that, they do a cultural survey. How does your business perform with respect to workplace health and safety? The organisations that say, ours, we work in organisations that say our organisation bats above its average. Other organisations say, how do they do that?
Sure.
And it's not necessarily that they spend more money. It's not necessarily that they're doing different things. They're still doing the pre-employments. They're providing injury prevention management stuff. They're doing other compliance stuff like every other business. So why are they different? And it often comes down to leadership, the communication, talking about the future with clarity. Because if the workforce is saying, if I'm a business leader in an industry and I get up and say I really care about your health and safety, you can imagine there's a few cynical people in the hundreds or the thousands there going, mate, Andrew, you don't care about my health and safety, mate. I'm one of 1,000 here.
Yeah.
How can you say that with a straight face? And you go, well, I'm that serious about this message that we've got a very clear method on how we manage this. And I'm even that serious of it. And you know what? And we've specified this method so it's clear for everyone. But then what we do is we actually monitor that method to verify that we actually implement it. And if it's not having the desired effect, we'll scrap it and we'll go again and we'll continuously improve that. And, having that plan and having that strategy that people can say, this is my message, this is my method, we'll monitor it, and therefore we'll have some better management, of course we will, but we're then going to indulge in this mastery of how we do this better.
It's not only outcome driven, with constant, I guess, for your monitoring, but continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Mate, I want to bring you back then to more of the operations. Okay, so obviously you've just gone through and Ethos has got a lot of moving parts, a lot going on, and you go into new things, and that requires things like new skills and new capital, and obviously knowing your history a bit, you've had various ownership structures and changes and that sort of thing. won't get into the detail there, but talk to me about, you know, the key to having good dynamics or good relationships amongst that various shareholders or, you know, at various points in time.
Yeah. It's a really interesting, you know, we've had some turnover of shareholders, and it hasn't been all smooth sailing either. And I think it's nothing personal, but I think what I think is key with this is, one, being clear on your purpose. And yeah, when you actually start out with this, you'll sit down with someone, they say, have you got a clear business plan and purpose? And you just, as a young bloke, I didn't understand that. I go, mate, that's not going to change what I do tomorrow. But, you know, now reflecting back and being, you know, leadership's talking about the future with clarity. And then you might have one person that's willing to follow you saying, that's a good idea. And this is what I've sort of learned. And then another one comes along. And then because you start getting this, you sort of break the mold. Oh, I'm interested and I'll follow along. So from a business perspective, having that clear message and being able to talk about the future with clarity will have people want to join and follow, and, you know, people buy your service and say, you're going to take me on a journey that I'm interested in, because there's better outcomes. Hence that Northern Star of, we want to keep people healthy, happy, safe. And as a concept, because if you go into a business and you say, right, you might be sceptical of your leader's message, but who here wants to be part of an unhealthy, unhappy and unsafe business, and one that's unproductive? No, they know. Well, we're all aligned. We want to be part of a healthy, happy, safe, productive business. Right, clear. So that's our purpose. Then being clear in terms of, so we're saying why we're there, and then it's saying, you know, what we do. Well, how are we actually going to achieve that? We do that through through community with our clinic. We do that through industry, and we're going to enhance both of those with our technology. So that's part of our message. And then underpinning that, we look at our longer term. We'll have a 3-year aspirational goal, but then we will break that down into our years. And I like to have that on one page, and you hear about that, because being able to talk to that strategy on one page, it be coherent, people go, oh, I can understand that, and I like where you're headed. Yeah. And yeah, I'm interested. And I think that's been so in history, I don't think we've actually nailed that. So all the people on the bus haven't generally been aligned. That's what creates, you know, a lot of the conflict. And then if you've got certain, you know, I suppose shareholders, or it could be a staff member that's got interests elsewhere, or vested interests, it's not necessarily a personal thing, it's just that we're not aligned. And then you just got to make a decision. And sometimes those are hard and courageous decisions, but I think if you make those, we're in a situation now, couldn't be happier. Yeah. You know, where we're going to align group shareholders, we're, you know, staff members, and I say this in terms of, you've always got one. It's like a sporting team. There's always one. You go, far out. But I can honestly say, you just, at the moment, we've got a team that is, you know, humming along, and I know that won't be indefinitely.
Yeah, sure. Touch wood.
It's one of those things in which you hope that you can manage as well as you can, and keep, and even a medium-sized enterprise, we lose people to bigger enterprises seeking sometimes, or I don't know, it's an opportunity, and hopefully you have some of those people circle back if we continue to grow and, you know, meet our plans. And
well, I think the other thing too is that if you don't have that alignment, it shines through, whether it's said or unsaid, and you lose the good people.
And you know, in the world today, you can see, you know, situations, there's conflict in certain regions of our world that, you know, if you're spending a lot of energy in conflict, you're not actually, you're not achieving much. Yeah. You're spending too much energy with this, so it's better off identifying that, right, that's not working. You know, let's establish where we're actually headed, and if you're on this bus, we can then proceed. But if not, let's that's a good point. Proceed in different ways.
So let's talk health industry. You know, very, very a lot of variations of that description, I guess. But I think what we like about the health industry generally is it's not going anywhere. Don't get me wrong, I guess it depends on what pocket of it you're in, depends on how much love you're feeling and how not. But I think the good thing with health, it's good and bad, that it's fairly inelastic, I guess. So, from that aspect, it's a good thing. But talk to me about your experience with the health industry.
Yeah, I suppose, running a small, medium-sized enterprise in health, I sit on the board of the Primary Health Network for Hunter, New England, Central Coast. So, that gives a perspective on the health industry more broadly as well. But seeing the primary healthcare system in which I operate with our business, but also the Primary Health Network, it's federally funded. It commissions over $100 million into the region. It does comprehensive needs assessments of where gaps are in health in the regions, and it tries gaps by commissioning health services, and principally to prevent poor health outcomes, and also prevent people going to the acute care system. And of course, the primary care system funded by federal funding, the acute care system state funding. It's frustrating, watching that. And it's frustrating also, you look at, some of the monies in the health industry that you look at and go, it can't be worth that, seriously. You're not providing that good outcome. Whereas other sections of the health industry, your seagulls fighting over a chip. And, it's embarrassing. So, and in terms of prevention's the best cure, you go, well, why don't we invest more money in preventative health rather than the acute care, cure type outcome? But there's a lot of emotion invested in that. Because, if lives are on the line, everyone wants a fix. So we throw lots of money at that, whereas, the preventative side of things. So that's a frustration. But it's one of those things in which, it's funny, I graduated from a PhD, and my father, who's been in, farming history, but, let's call him in the caravan industry, and done very well and run a good business. And I still remember graduating from my PhD, and this is coming from a high school dropout that's done very well for himself. He said to me when I finished my PhD, so he said, "What do you do now?" This. And I go, I went off into this elaborate story. And he said to me, "You know what? Sounds to me that you're nothing but a used car salesman, son." And I said, "Oh, gosh, Dad, thanks for that. It's only taken me 8 years to get here." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, you got a shit message that no bastard wants to buy, mate. You better get good at selling it." So talking about nutrition, and it was offensive at the time, but I look back now and go, wow, that is some pretty
in the room, but if no one can understand you, or they don't know how it benefits them,
that's correct.
You're not going to get anywhere.
And so communication in health, and that's something I think we can do better in primary healthcare. So, and I go back to workplaces that have been seen to be and perceived to be batting above their average and treating their workforces really well. Guess what they do differently? It's not the things on the ground, it's the communication. It's the alignment. So I think, and people will engage about celebrating those that stand out from the crowd, from these miracle cures or losing a whole heap of weight. The true success is how many people you can engage in that intervention.
Yep.
You take weight loss as one example and you go, yeah, we'll celebrate if someone's lost 30 kilos and wow. But if you think about us as a population, think from a primary care lens, and you go, well, the average adult has put on 300 grams per year per head of population since the 80s, and this is, we're not growing taller. So rather than set these unrealistic goals for individuals, if you went a whole of population approach, and this is where they landed with the New South Wales minerals industry, they said, if we can even just stop people putting on weight, that is a world-class outcome. But they didn't want to land at that. They said, we can do better. What they arrived at is 1 kilo, 1 miner, 1 year at a time. What a clear message and a clear pilot light. Because if I'm a healthy weight, I want to be part of that, because if I'm putting on weight, I'm working against the goal. I'm part of now the community. If I'm, batting above my average and I need to lose 10 kilos, well, I can contribute to that as well. And, and people will want to belong to, a goal like that. It's a population. You're doing it more than just yourself and, it's for others. You're now belonging to some sort of movement as well. So I think there's, strength in clear goals as well. And I speak of, that's one example. And I reckon this can shift in business. And what I've learnt from others, so sitting on the board with some great leaders there, now one particular board member with that organisation said, we need, we're a commissioning body, we should be getting as much of the money that we get to commission out as efficiently as we can, so organisations are on the ground delivering health services. If we're only operating at X percent, let's just call it 80%, we've got 20% of, a big sum of money not getting out to the people that need it most.
Yeah, sure.
So are we doing our job as a commissioning body? So they said at the time, let's set our goal, right? And we should be dispersing 97% of this. We go from an organisation that's, middle pegging to a high performing organisation because now we're meeting that goal. And it set the tone for everyone from the board down to the executive, down to the people on the ground, and the actions that we're taking to do that. So I think having some really clear metrics like that is so important also to drive performance and drive alignment for business.
That's a good point. Mate, you mentioned before you've gone, I think you said as high as 65, 70 people, as low as, well, probably low when you started, to 2, to be honest, but now see about 26. You've got the big shoes on when you're people management. Not the easiest thing in the world, I've been getting that space as well, and I think it's the best and the worst of the day. Yeah. What's your tips around the ups and downs and what you find in where you get the best out of people management?
Yeah. So I suppose I should put some context. How do you go from 65 to 17 in a very short space of time? It's called the mining downturn, and we're heavily leveraged. We delivered a lot of services in mining during 2000, from 2010 to 12, and then just fell off a cliff. And there's some mistakes that you can learn from in that, I still remember getting some advice. I was talking to others in the industry and saying, how are you feeling about this? Because we came through the GFC because mining was still going crazy. It didn't even touch us. And we'll ride this one out, but no. Anyway, one of the guys who I spoke to who ran, a large mining contracting service, he said to me he'd cut his workforce by 50%. I went, oh, you're ruthless. And, and that was just inexperience on my behalf because we held on to too many people for too long. It wasn't good for them because we didn't have work for them. We were tearing up cash. We dug a great big hole. Morale was down, and you're making decisions that you just don't want to, and a lot of those prior to Christmas. These are young families who are just going,
it's horrible.
Oh, horrible. And then, but again, that person said to me, I went back to him because, and he said to me, he said, mate, are you sleeping at night at the moment? I said, no. He goes, well, let's just have a look at this. If you, and this is the hard truth of business sometimes. If you draw a line through all those people, you're going to sleep at night. Because you're a service-based business. And if you don't, all those people aren't going to have a job either and you're not going to have a business. And anyway, so that was sort of...
hard lesson.
It was a hard lesson. And I think, you come out of that and over the course of time again, and that had a long-lasting legacy because we've had to dig ourselves out of a great big hole. But we've managed to transcend that. It was a big learning lesson. We won't do it again. And you might call it ruthless, or it's just, it's business, unfortunately.
Well, I think if you take it a step, as you said, it probably comes back to level of concentration risk around, a particular industry or a particular contract, and it's, I always say to clients or anyone that listen, when you're making money, it hides a lot of things, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
Things are rosy, and then it's when you're not making money, they shine through like the proverbial. So, I think that's probably an aspect of it. But from that people side of things, it's staying close to people and, you know, as you said before, from an industry point of view, but it's also from a people, that clear communication. And, you know, a great saying I got told a long time ago is hire slow, fire fast. You know, and that don't want to sound, you know, like a toe cutter, but reality is often we bring people on too quickly, you know, and we don't act quickly enough when we need to. So you're right, it is part of business. And
it's not a great part of business, but you know, it's there, and it's one of those things. I think, it tugs at the heartstrings when you got to do it. But having said that, you know, we've employed people that were terminated during that period.
Well, I think the good thing is, as I said, if you stay close to people, do it the right way. There's respect. There's a, you know, you can still get. It's not nice, but good outcomes.
Yeah.
So I want to touch on that technology space. We briefly touched on it. I mean, when we say technology, there's a level of, you know, an operating system. There's, you know, other things we start these days with. I think COVID helped with Zoom and Teams and, you know, Dropbox and all these sort of things. But then you've got where you really take technology as you said, app development and innovative practices in your business. You know, how did you fall into that, and what sort of skill set do you need to bring in to actually achieve that?
Yeah, again, probably another key learning. You know, you go into these things reasonably naive. So people are saying, surely they're now, you know, particularly around fatigue risk management, and we thought we had this killer app idea. And we outsourced the development of that because we didn't have the capability or skills. It's still a reasonable concept, but we managed to burn a whole lot of cash that we didn't necessarily want to. And at the end of the day, we ripped that up.
Yeah.
Still as a concept. And this is a confluence of I'd met a guy, you know, who were having a discussion around who was in technology, and he said to me, you know, what the vision was for this and what our experience of it. And I said I'd never outsource anything. I'd only ever do it in house. And this guy said to me, I could build that for you in a month, mate. And I went, yeah, I doubt that. Like, we've just spent 5 years on this and we've ripped it up. And anyway, he said, he said, I'll tell you what, I'll bring your prototype back in a month, and if you like it, we'll continue to progress. If you don't owe me anything. Anyway, so now subsequently, he came back not only with that app, but other ideas and functions. Now that guy's now our CTO, and what we thought was a killer app is one small app.
Yeah.
And it was never going to be a killer app. And, you know, so that application now, you know, we've got a couple of large organisations in utilities, in mining, utilising that to automate their fatigue risk management system. And we've got others that we're rolling out over the next couple of months, you know, another rail-based organisation and another utility, and then hopefully mining, and then another utility earlier in the year. And it just helps organisations monitor their work hours to ensure no one's breaching them or working at intensities are going to put them at fatigue risk. And then if they are working at high risk, it helps them take like any other safety risk. But now you're dealing with human factors. So, you know, if you've got someone working at heights, you'd have an elevated work platform, you'd put lanyards and training and stuff. So fatigue's no different. You need to put mitigation strategies if you're working people at high intensities. Yeah. And, you know, people work at high intensity in health. They, you know, the poles and wires and electricity, they run 24/7. If they go down, we send someone out to fix that and put them at risk. So it's about managing that risk.
Yeah, sure. I think the key things that I like what you said about there, you know, technology, we said before, you can't put your head in the sand, and if you can offer a better service or product or whatever it may be to your end user, that's where the world we live in. You need to look at it. But I think the key thing is you don't need to know how. You need to identify what the need is, and then the how sort of, you know, well, if anything, eventually doing it yourself or getting it developed without that skill set before ourselves, then you can spend and burn a lot of money. It's having someone. I think one of the best things I've seen people do is, hire someone just as a consultant that knows their stuff, and spend a little bit of money there before you go into the, the big world of some pretty deep spending if you're getting into that tech space.
Yeah, and I think, and we also, principally what we look at now is that our technology is just about enhancing what we do with people and systems. It automates those systems largely, or brings about an efficiency. So if it doesn't make it more accessible for people, if it doesn't make it more efficient, if it doesn't make it replicable, so you're getting replicable and consistent outcomes, and it doesn't allow it to scale, well, we don't indulge in it because it will. If it can't do those elements, it can't then achieve the greatest thing up here, and that is better outcomes. And that might be an efficiency, but it could be better health outcomes, better safety outcomes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So I come back a bit more to business. Well, a few final ones for you. I'm gathering, your PhD, you probably didn't stick around and do some extra. So most of us fall into business not knowing much about it. What are your tips? What are the things you swear by, the habits you get into in running the business operations?
I think, the clarity with the message, and then providing that clear method for not only your outside business and customers, but for your team as well, so they can link into how they fit. So I think that's really important. That cliche, fail fast. Haven't always done that, but that would have saved us a lot, but it's taught us a lot as well. And don't be afraid. I think it's also, I always never want to be one of those people that said, I had that idea. It's just take risks. Don't be afraid to fail. And because you're going to be your harshest judge. And having a crack, and we joke about it in our business a bit, but we are a bit serious. We don't have a big runway because a lot of our stuff we self-fund, all of it, right? So we don't have a big runway. So we tend to build this plane and get it off the ground, and then we tend to build the plane while it's in the air a bit. It makes us reasonably nimble, but we see lots of examples where they've got a big long runway, burn a lot of cash, and don't get the plane off the ground. So it's getting those prototypes up early, getting it in there. I think our best solutions are being developed in collaboration with our customers.
Well, I'm sure you've heard it, but it's the dogs don't like it. The great old saying of dog food, and I think that's the problem. Too many people wait for it to be what they deem perfect. From my point of view, I know we've done some tech before, and we've had people come in and just go MVP, minimum viable product. Is that low? If it's not, that's not like, well, we probably shouldn't go too much further.
And because if they go, I like that, but there's always the but. Can it do this? Can it do that? Can it do that? No, but that's a good idea, and it's part of our development pathway. Because generally, you've probably thought of those things. Yeah, that'd be nice to have. Is that something that you'd want? Oh yeah, that would be a priority. Yeah, absolutely.
Mate, biggest mistakes and or lesson. I mean, we've spoken about a few already, but it doesn't just have to be a business.
Biggest mistakes, and I think I've mentioned a couple of them, and that is, I say the mistakes and failures, but I think that whole experience through the mining downturn and not responding early enough. Going into technology naively. Look, you go into business naively. Like people go, all the autonomy you get as a business owner. Okay, no. It just fills you with responsibility. It comes that accountability.
Book.
So it's... So I think they're some of the biggest failures, but they've been my biggest learnings as well.
Yeah, sure. I can appreciate that. And for me, the one we always ask is best advice ever received.
I think it's that a leader talks about the future with clarity.
Yeah, I like that.
And also, and people follow that. And also that you can never please everyone either. Inherently we want to be and it's not about making enemies by any means, but the fact is not everyone can be aligned. And, in a place like Newcastle, you can't afford to have too many enemies. And, I say this to my kids sometimes, and I think I hope I'm applying it in business. And I'm pretty blunt with the kids sometimes. My boys, I'll go, they blow up at me as a father, and I go, listen, I've got one job, and that's to bring up, respectable young men and adults. And if I'm a bit hard, some purpose. And that's for the love of you guys. I'm not always going to like you, but I'll love you. And I'm going to be hard sometimes when I set these standards. And I think that applies in business sometimes.
That's a good analogy.
Sometimes you have that hard discussion with people, but if you don't transparently have it early, people aren't clear and with you, and they can't then be aligned. So then it just remains in unresolved conflict. And I think, some of those is that, now I'm going to try and narrow this down to answer your question. And the best advice is that get clear about your message. Communicate with the individual, get agreement with them, right? Talk about what agreement looks like. And so you're talking about the consequences of what good agreement looks like and what bad agreement looks like. So everyone's clear. And then you can both take responsibility. And if you then go down the path and you're suffering some of the consequences, you can say, well, clearly we haven't been in agreement, we're not being aligned, and this is the consequence. We're now sitting down having the discussion that we probably shouldn't be, in business together, or you're probably not aligned with our business, and there's probably other things that are going to suit you better. Or alternatively, you're sitting down having a great old yarn about what you're going to do next together.
I think it's great when I hear about, we talk about accountability all the time, but realistically accountability is after the fact.
Yeah.
And you need consequences. If you can get on the front foot, it's about responsibility.
And that little framework, that was given to me. So, and I use that all the time.
No, that's good. I'm going to try and wrap some of this up. It's been a great chat, but, the thing I love from the start, I can say sport because that's your background, my background as well, but I'll just say generally networks are a great avenue for experience and business, so that's one I keep imploring for people to get out amongst that. The business and where Ethos eventually came to was to meet a market need, demand. Too many people don't look at what their customers are after. You've reinforced what other people have said plenty of times. Make sure you've got sounding boards around you, mentors, other advisors, coaches, whatever it may be. Be a continual learner, a bit like that. Love the reading. Wellbeing actually leads to better bottom line. I think the problem with wellbeing these days is it's so mystified or bastardised even. When you get to the crux of it, of what it is, it puts a meat on the bones. It actually can and will lead to a better result. Be clear on purpose from a leadership point of view. I like what you said, really, businesses should be focused on community, industry and technology, and that's what you've built your platform on. So need alignment within the leadership group. Perfect one, especially for you with multiple owners and that sort of thing, or even a multiple executive team. Communication and clarity of message. That was a key one, and that was some of your best advice. You said, a leader talks about the future with clarity. So I'll use that one myself, mate. Clear metrics on performance leads to better outcomes. Careful around your risk, particularly you mentioned around concentration risk and that the incident in the mining industry. Matching skill sets, particularly with that technology piece. Just because you're the leader doesn't mean you need to do everything or you know everything. That's a pretty important one. Fail fast and learn from mistakes, but the key one which I like was take some risks. Too many people don't. So we covered a lot. Anyone that wants to understand more about Ethos Health, what's the website?
ethoshealth.com.au.
Get on, check it out. Mate, thanks for joining me on Down to Business.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Great chat.
Till next time, guys, cheers.